Agnes, Callamard, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you.
The Israeli offensive in Gaza is entering its 7th week, and thousands have been killed, and the enclave is effectively on the brink of collapse. Last week, a Shifa hospital was attacked and raided, and then there was a Saturday morning bombing of the Jabalia refugee camp in North Gaza. Israel has said that it's focused on rooting out Hamas, but the question is, at what cost are they willing to do this? You're the head of Amnesty International. Your organization documents human rights violations and war crimes around the world that are committed by all sides of a particular conflict. In this case, what violations and what crimes has your organization discovered since October 7th?
The October 7 attacks by Hamas constituted a number of war crimes and possible crimes against humanity. The response by Israel thus far includes a litany of human rights violations, which also amount to war crimes and possibly worse. We have documented the use of starvation as a weapon of war, the use of water as a weapon of war, the use of medicine as a weapon of war. We have documented indiscriminate, disproportionate, and clearly, in our opinion, targeted attacks on civilians and civilians' objects. We have documented the use of collective punishment, which is also a war crime. So the violations committed by the Israeli forces in their response to Hamas's own war crimes have been sadly endless and in contradiction with international humanitarian law.
So you've laid out a series of documented violations and war crimes, which is a part of the equation. But the other part of the equation, of course, is accountability for those war crimes and violations. Israel's not a member of the International Criminal Court. Palestine is, having joined in 2015, and that has to make the situation even more complicated. Can these crimes even be prosecuted? And how difficult is it to prosecute war crimes in this case if Israel is not party to the ICC?
Well, the first impediment to the delivery of justice for the crimes committed by Hamas and by the Israeli forces is the unconditional support by too many countries, either to Israel or to Hamas. You are mentioning that we are entering week 7 of that crisis, of this conflict. Throughout those 7 weeks, we have seen unreserved support from the United States, from the United Kingdom to Israel. That unreserved support means that there is no those governments are not placing any focus on denouncing what Israel is doing. They are not putting any focus on accountability and on the delivery of justice. And I could say exactly the same with those countries that are supporting Hamas, who also, some of them have failed to hold Hamas to account and to denounce the crimes. So geostrategic consideration, real politics are the main impediment to the delivery of justice. The second one is the amnesia, I will say, the amnesia of the Western world right now to forget that there is a context to what is happening now. It is a context of repression, oppression, occupation, and apartheid. And until and unless that context is taken into account, until and unless Israel's system of apartheid and military occupation are not taken into account, there will be no delivery of justice.
UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has decried violations of international law and has urged a, quote, rigorous investigation and full accountability. He, however, was reportedly denied access to Israel and to Palestinian territories by the Israeli government. Israel has claimed that there are Hamas bunkers and weapons stores that are situated within civilian infrastructure. A UN humanitarian team led by the World Health Organization was able to access Al-Shifa Hospital over the weekend. However, access to Gaza is still severely restricted. How difficult is it for independent organizations like yourselves to gain access?
We have means, we have people on the ground, we have an evidence lab that is able to analyze attacks, analyze through satellite evidence and other forms of evidence, determine the nature of the attacks, try to identify whether there was a military necessity to it when possible. We always communicate with the Israeli authorities about our findings. They usually do not respond, but as a matter of principle, we let them know. We have issued today a report that is documented what we believe to be targeted shelling of a civilian object, including the Orthodox Church in all Gaza and including refugee camps. In those two cases, we have found no evidence of military objectives nearby, and even the Israeli authorities believed that there was some kind of military objectives nearby. They still should have taken a lot of precautions, including warning for those that have found refuge in the Orthodox Church. Allow me, because I think we need to give humanity to what's happening. Allow me to tell you about Hamas al-Suri, who was in that Orthodox church, who lost his 3 children and 10 other relatives in the attack. And he told Amnesty International, and I cite, "My heart died with my children that evening. All my children were killed. Majid, 11, Julie, 12, Suhail, 14. I have nothing left. I should have died with my children." And what about Moshe Lotem, an Israeli father whose daughter, Agar, is being held hostage in Gaza? And he has told us, "I miss them so much. Every day that passes becomes more difficult. They are in a very vulnerable situation, and the attacks in Gaza scare me a lot, a lot." So these are the reality behind the figures, behind the astronomical figures of 13,000 dead, above 25,000 people wounded. There are fathers, mothers, brothers and sisters and children made orphans. This is the reality of that war, and we are made to witness those continuing relentless violation of international law. That war will remain in our memory, in the memory of our humanity, as a moment where the world turned their back on civilians. It turned its back on Palestinian people. It had the means to influence the behavior of Israel, and it failed to do so. We all have 13,000 deaths on our conscience.
You have pointed out the double standards between the West's response to Russia's attacks on Ukraine versus what we're seeing from the West with regard to Israel's attacks in Gaza. When you think about that double standard, what are the consequences of it?
Well, the double standard is that, first of all, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that in the case of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the Western world, led by the United States, called on the entire international community to condemn Russia. We actually at Amnesty International did the same. You know, we have done everything in our little power to demand that human rights organizations and governments around the world condemn Russia's aggression of Ukraine, because that is unconscionable, what happened. Now, fast forward to Gaza and Israel. Yes, Hamas committed heinous crimes on October 7, crimes that amount to war crimes, possible crimes against humanity. There is a context to that crime, to those crimes, plural. That is a context of military occupation and apartheid. We would have expected the United States and other countries to actually take stock of the fact that the Palestinian people are too fighting against an occupation. We would have expected the United States and other Western powers to say, okay, if we support Ukraine against Russia's aggression, surely we can do something for Palestinians against the occupation by Israel and the regime of apartheid. Who is going to trust the United States, given what they have done over the last 7 weeks and before that? You know, so it's the entire peace and security system that is crumbling because of those double standards.
Agnes, Amnesty has been documenting human rights violations by both Hamas and Israel during the course of this war. And your organization has stated that it found war crimes were committed by both sides. But this statement drew anger and criticism from the Israeli government. What do you say to this?
When I say this has been going on for many years, every time we cite violations by the Israeli government, the Israeli authorities, we are being accused of anti-Semitism. The only conclusion that can be extracted from the behavior of the Israeli authorities is the following: you cannot criticize Israel. That's it. That's the only implication of their position. They cannot tolerate any criticism of Israel authorities, Israeli government's behavior. They cannot tolerate any kind of reporting on the multiple violations by the Israeli government. And to be honest, we're not the only ones. I feel that I am in great company right now. I've seen reports attacking every single UN agencies. I've seen reports attacking a range of other human rights organizations. I've seen them also attacking and denouncing as terrorists Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations that are our partners and are fantastic.
Agnes, does that at all shape your strategy or your approach to dealing with this issue, to pointing out and documenting these
question?
You know, what do you do?
No, it doesn't impact our investigation. It demands that we are being far more aware of the actual reality of anti-Semitism. It demands of Amnesty International that we denounce anti-Semitism in all its forms and shapes around the world. This is something we have been doing for many years, but it is something we must keep doing and we must prioritize, because there is absolutely no way. It's intolerable that the actions by the Israeli governments should become used by anti-Semites to attack Jewish people around the world. So, you know, it demands of us that we stand firm and strong against anti-Semitism, and that we do. What it does not demand is that we stop and refrain from criticizing the Israeli governments and monitoring and reporting on their multiple violations of the rights of Palestinian people.
Agnes Callamard, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.